Good morning and welcome back to Morning Movie News. Coming off of the long holiday weekend here in the United States. And what a holiday it was. It was Thanksgiving, that's a big one, which of course ushers in the Christmas season. So there's pretty much nothing happening work-wise anywhere in the United States. So I had some concern that it would be difficult to find stories to discuss today. But that turned out to be not the case, as we have, well, not 3 stories. I would say 2 really big stories and a fluff piece. All right, so the first one actually broke over the holiday weekend, and that was that's because it's still ongoing, and that's that Jude Law is in negotiations to join the Captain Mar-vell movie, and what I can only assume is an attempt to recapture that Chris Pine magic in Wonder Woman. Yes, I brought up Wonder Woman yet again, but I think that's going to be a model for a lot of studios going forward because the formula worked there. Well, it wasn't a formula when Patty Jenkins did it, but everyone's going to try and formalize it. All right, so, and I think that Jude Law is a pretty good Chris Pine approximation, actually, which is another reason that I bring it up. But only if they let Jude Law be zany Jude Law, not bland Jude Law, which, you know, the box that they put him in for so long, they constrained him in when they forced him to be like a typical leading man, which is clearly not where he excels. I think the pinnacle of Jude Law's zaniness was his turn in The Young Pope, a show which really nobody watched, but I think a lot of casting directors and producers did because his career has certainly taken off since. He was really good. I only watched the first episode. I didn't think it was that good either, but it made quite the impression on me. And I've felt for a while now that he's become quite an interesting actor. And of course he has another big role, which we'll talk about in just a moment, which is why I have a problem with maybe him having this role. Now, the other reason that I make the Chris Pine, Steve Trevor approximation is that in several tellings of the tale of Captain Mar-vell, when they tell the tale of Captain Mar-vell, she's romantically involved with the character that it's said that Jude Law will be playing. He is the first Captain Mar-vell, or Mar-vell, a Kree spy on Earth masquerading as scientist Walter Lawson. Now, there's an explosion at the military base where he and Danvers both work and potentially flirt or have a relationship, and he tries to protect her, but ends up making her, you know, through the act of the explosion, as tends to happen in comics, a Kree-human hybrid with his powers. And then he becomes her mentor. And, you know, I don't want another Hank Pym, Scott Lang situation over in Ant-Man, but we'll see. With the added layer of dating. So Marvel, as usual, had no comment, but these rumors are usually correct, which is why their casting announcements are never a big deal when they're officially announced. One great example, Brie Larson as Captain Mar-vell at Comic-Con, when they brought her out and everybody was like, we already know, it's been in the trades for weeks. So the deal is, though, is that Jude Law is, of course, young Dumbledore. They just released our first look at him. He looks fantastic, and that's over, of course, at one of Disney and Marvel's chief competitors, or really only real competitor, although I don't know so much after Justice League. We'll see. Warner Brothers. So I'm not such a big fan of spreading talent so thin like that in high-profile franchises that are simultaneous. I mean, I guess to some degree, Chris Pratt's doing it. He's in both the Jurassic World movies, and he's also, of course, Star-Lord in the Guardians of the Galaxy films. But they're not, I don't know, maybe it would work then. And I have to see how he looks. I have to see how Jude Law looks in the role. But I would think that he would put his all into being young Dumbledore, and that's such a big part. And it's so important to the Harry Potter franchise to have him doing double duty at the same time. This comes out in 2019, but you know, the Fantastic Beasts movies presumably are supposed to continue, supposed to go through 5. So we'll see. But you know, I do have to, and also the other thing is I don't understand why somebody like 2 studios would want him, considering the fact, well, he's such a captivating actor these days, he still doesn't have a lot of box office clout, which, oh yeah, makes him another step closer to Chris Pine. All right, so that's the first story of the day, and I'm curious to what do you think of Jude Law being not only in the role and a potential romantic interest for Brie Larson, but also what do you think of him doing double duty at the same time in 2 such major franchises? All right, so the second story is that fluff piece, which a number of you tweeted to me this morning when it debuted in Vanity Fair, and that's a celebration of 10 years of Marvel movies. And it was a very nice piece, although I thought that the photos that they took were pretty uninspired. They were just the characters in front of like a white backdrop, making them look a little action figure-y, but yet they weren't doing that so much. It was just kind of like, oh, I don't like this, but if I say it looks like action figures, maybe I like it a little bit better. And then they talked about Kevin Feige, and basically that was like the whole, it was really basically like Kevin Feige's awesome is responsible for all our success. And as we've discussed many times, I think that's probably true. And I think Kathleen Kennedy is fast approaching the same level of importance over at Star Wars, which we've also been discussing. And then, of course, in the article, they actually say, why does nobody else have the same success that you do, Marvel? And the actors say it's because they don't have a Kevin Feige. And of course, I think that's, very obviously talking about what's going on over at DC, where they still don't have a Kevin Feige. And Kevin Feige is one person, not two people sharing the job. It's got to be one person. All right, so the headline that they said, I think to get everybody interested in the piece, the only thing I could say is that maybe this signals that the Infinity War trailer is indeed coming in front of Star Wars if they are ramping up Infinity War promotion already. I think they're like, Thor's almost at 800 million, or maybe even crossed over into it at this point. I haven't checked the worldwide numbers for it this morning. Let's start talking Avengers Infinity War. So that would be exciting, and that would be, a lot of people have already seen the trailer, but we'd be able to see a high-res version. Maybe they recut it a little bit to give a little something extra. It'll be exciting. But anyway, the little mini headline was like, oh, they're gonna have to say goodbye to some of the original Avengers soon, and I was like, oh, I better read this before I film morning movie news. Does it need its own video? It does not need its own video. And so they were just like, yep, these contracts are almost up for the original Avengers. And then Scarlett Johansson's like, when we were on set filming the Avengers movies right now, they're doing 3 and 4 back to back. We were like, I hope someone takes a picture because this probably is never going to happen again. I think this is all negotiating tactics. I think I think a number of them will re-up. It may not be at the same level in terms of money and involvement, but I don't think any of those characters are going away. Even if some of them are killed during Avengers 3 or 4, we'll talk about 4 in just a moment, I still think that they'll, it's comic books. They'll find a way to come back eventually. The characters they're talking about, the original Avengers from the first Avengers film, are just too popular to jettison. And I think the new ones aren't quite popular enough just yet to be the main group. So I just don't see it happening. Unless something amazing happens in Avengers 3 and 4, but I just don't see it. And speaking of Avengers 4, Kevin Feige said, oh, this is a turning point. That's the turning point. The MCU is going to be pre-Avengers 4 and post-Avengers 4. I'm not going to tell you what that is, but I think we all know it's Secret Invasion. It comes right after the Captain Mar-vell movie. They have Skrulls there. For some reason, it takes place in 1990. I'll tell you why. To have Skrulls go in there and take people's places, because that's the whole point of Secret Invasion. You didn't know it, but this whole time, these shape-shifting aliens were actually some of your closest workers, within the MCU. And so I think that's exactly what's going to happen. So they'll probably have an amazing end credit sequence at the end of Captain Mar-vell. And I think that's a really good way to get everyone to see Captain Mar-vell, right? Which comes out on International Women's Day. That's barf. That's the most too on-the-nose marketing ever. So the other good thing in the article, so besides the importance of Avengers 4, which we already kind of knew, and that it was going to probably be Secret Invasion, is that we got a good look at Scarlett Johansson's new blonde look as Black Widow in Avengers Infinity War. She looks like Yelena Belova to the point of distraction. Also to the point that I wouldn't be surprised if that's the alias she's using in Avengers Infinity War. For those of you who don't know, and we'll discuss it far more when this trailer finally drops and we start getting some real looks at the movie, Yelena Belova was another Black Widow, another woman who came from the program that Natasha did, and she, was not so good. Black Widow is supposed to also walk a fine line, but Yelena stumbled a bit more on that line, let's just say. I believe she also dated Deadpool. So she looks exactly like that character, like exactly. So I think that's probably the alias that she's using, because it's pretty clear from the end of Civil War, and from what we've seen so far for Infinity War, that Cap and Black Widow have gone underground. They apparently did not stay in Wakanda. All right, so that's the second story of the day, and I'm curious, did you see that? I'll put a link to that Vanity Fair article down below, but again, it's just a fluff piece. And I like that Kevin Feige's offices are on the lot. I think that's super nice. I just, it gives a little twinkle in my eye. I think it's great to think of the empire that Walt built, and that some really exciting executives are still working there. All right, so then the final story of the day is that this morning I was like, why is all this royal stuff trending on Twitter? And I clicked on it, and what do you know? Prince Harry popped the question to Meghan Markle, and they're going to get married. So they weren't talking about it for a long time out of the royal palace. Now that's all they're going to talk about. They're all excited about it, and I think the Crown's like, hot damn, the Netflix show. This is great advertising for our show, which starts December 8th, the second season. So the reason we're talking about it here on a movie news, entertainment show is that I'm curious to see if they can, because of course Meghan Markle is a Hollywood actress. That's stretching it a bit, but she is on the show Suits, so she's an actress. And that's a very specific type of person to marry. And so I'm wondering if they can recreate the Princess Grace mania. Of course, Grace Kelly marrying the Prince of Monaco and becoming a major tourist, draw for that country, their principality. And then also to some degree, Princess Diana mania. Of course, Prince Harry and Prince William's very famous mother. So let's talk about that. So talk about both. So the first thing with the Princess Grace thing, this is a big opportunity. We'll see if it works. There's a lot of discussion these days about how much change people want to see, but this is legit. This isn't, she's actually marrying into the British royal family. That's a very big deal because think about it. For years after Disney introduced its first princesses of color, and Tiana being their first legit ball gown princess, there was like Pocahontas and Mulan, and people were like, that's nice, but I want a princess in a ball gown. And so they created Tiana, who I think is a wonderful character. The last 2D movie that they made, certainly 2D princess movie. And if you've ever seen Princess and the Frog, it's a really good movie. You should definitely check it out. I always kind of feel bad it doesn't get more respect. This is a real-life princess who is a legit ball gown princess and in the most famous royal family in the world. So that's very exciting, and I think does give her a Princess Grace type appeal. And I bet a lot of people who weren't interested in the British royal family before are suddenly going to be very interested in it. And that's a potential, I'm curious because there was some very bad reaction to him dating Meghan Markle. So there might be some old school royal family fans who aren't into it, but they're just going to have to get into it. As we've discussed a couple of times when it's come up, the UK is one of the most diverse places on the planet, interestingly enough. And I think for the most part, they make it work. So there's the Hollywood angle, but then also with this being a legit princess of color, I think that's very much a Princess Diana of the people kind of situation. And I'll be curious to see how they play their role within the royal family. William and Kate are very low-key. They very much want to be like this suburban couple. They do their own grocery shopping. They do a couple events here and there, but they're not very high profile. And I'll be curious to see if maybe they step up their game. I don't know how competitive it is within the royal family, although it seems pretty competitive if you watch The Crown. William and Kate don't seem to want to play that game, but I think to some degree Harry does, and perhaps they could, at least for a little while, usurp William and Kate as the more high-profile royal couple because of her Hollywood background. And will she continue to act? And also, she's an American. She's an American marrying into the royal family. That's crazy. There's, it's very interesting who William and Harry decided to marry. Kate comes from a family that, you're supposed to usually marry someone else of some royal lineage, or from a big British family. They have so many over there, obviously, with the duchesses and the dukes and the etc. But Kate's family actually runs like a Party City supply store online, which is extremely, extremely successful. And so I think that Diana apparently worked very hard to make them feel like grounded, real guys, and that's certainly reflected in their wedding choices. So will Meghan Markle keep acting in America? She could start acting in the UK. I don't know. I mean, Grace Kelly retired, but she said she really regretted it, and I don't think that Meghan Markle could do romantic roles, certainly not very sexy roles for sure, because I just think that would be frowned upon to have that on film when she's married to Prince Harry. But they're never in line for succession, but they could still, I think, become quite popular. So I'm curious, what do you think of Prince Harry marrying Meghan Markle, marrying an American actress? Do you think that she could be a Princess Grace or a Princess Diana? And do you suddenly have more interest in the British royal family now that Meghan Markle is becoming a part of it? All right, so those are the 3 stories of the day. And the viewer question comes from Andrew Corbo. And Andrew says, question, Dear Grace, me and my friend had a debate recently, and I hope you can help us solve it. My pleasure. I say that a director is key to a movie's success or failure, and is important to developing the story. My friend says, though, that the director has no say in what the story is, and just films what the producers and writers come up with. I really hope you can help us solve this debate. I love all your content. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Andrew, and I will happily help you solve this. So, at the end of the day, the director is the captain of the ship. Sure, it's a lot harder to be the captain of a ship if some members of the crew aren't doing their job, and that includes the writer. but the buck stops with the director, and they have the ultimate responsibility as to what ends up on screen. I mean, sometimes think about it, when a movie isn't good, and even when we feel it's not well written, we don't go usually looking up the screenwriter or blaming the screenwriter to the degree that we blame the director or the producers, because they're really ultimately the ones in charge, because they are the ones who can ask for a rewrite. They hired that writer in the first place. They can go get a new writer. And speaking of rewrites, when a director is brought onto a project, there's usually another revision done on the script. There's another pass taken on it. Maybe it's a heavy reworking of the script. Maybe it's just a polish. But whenever a director's brought on, I think unless they're like really super new to being a director and so they have no clout, they're going to have ideas, and it would be disrespectful of everybody involved in the film not to try and incorporate some of that into the script. And you better believe they're going to make some changes when they're on set too, and the director is left to mostly on their own. They're going to be like, let's change it a little bit. I mean, look at what Phil Lord and Chris Miller did when they were left alone on the Han Solo movie, and Kathleen Kennedy, had to get pretty serious to bring an end to it because she otherwise could not, which is crazy when you think about it, to think that they might have been warned and they were like, well, we're just going to keep doing it. Now, again, as I just said, sometimes the suits can overrule a director, especially if they have no clout, or if it's a big property like the DCEU and they don't trust their talent. Like they didn't trust Zack Snyder after Batman v Superman, and they didn't even trust Joss Whedon. Because it was revealed that he got a lot of stuff cut out of the movie, but when you see someone like David Heyman in the Harry Potter films, although I think after Fantastic Beasts there might be a little bit more meddling, he's afforded a little more creative control, just like Christopher Nolan after Interstellar. Maybe a little, sometimes the suits. I think that it's never a good idea to give anyone too much power. It's a system of balance, just like the government. That's why you want directors and producers, and suits count in the producers category. They really should be working together as equals to get the best product at the end of the day. And they should, the director mostly representing the creative, the suits mostly representing the business, but they should both be aware of what the other needs to do and the importance of the other's category, as we've discussed before. But yes, a director is not helpless in the face of the story of their film. They're very much able to change it, and they have a very strong interest in doing so, because of course they will be the one who is blamed if the film is no good. Like for instance, I thought, Michael Green was a big problem. I called him out on Murder on the Orient Express because I liked a lot of what Kenneth Branagh did, although I said Kenneth Branagh was also culpable in that movie not working out. But when it came to Blade Runner 2049, which Michael Green also helped script, but he didn't script it solo, I don't believe. Oh yeah, the guy who wrote the original Blade Runner. So it's probably Michael Green's fault, come to think of it. But Denis Villeneuve took all the blame there. And we've talked about him before in regards to Blade Runner 2049. And I think he's a great example of someone, even though it was a very important film to everybody involved behind the scenes and on camera, it's really been Denis Villeneuve. And I think to some degree Ryan Gosling and Harrison Ford's folly, right? Ryan Gosling, maybe not a blockbuster actor. Harrison Ford, yeah, not coming back really. And then Denis Villeneuve, maybe he doesn't really quite, maybe he's not on his way up. Maybe he doesn't quite know what he's doing when it comes to big blockbuster fare. So I hope that settles the debate between you and your friend Andrew. Thank you for asking me to mediate. Thank you everybody for tuning in today. Please write down your thoughts on today's top 3 stories, Andrew's viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions, of course, that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.